Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Iron Squid. It's brought to you by Astro Gaming and Twitch.tv. My name is Totalbiscuit.
And I am EG.IdrA Apollo.
Welcome once again. And we've got a new group, which means fresh faces and fresh violence. Plenty of fighting going on here. Another group of 5 for the Iron Squid, consisting of 2 Zerg, 2 Terran, and a lone Protoss once again. The Protoss, sadly, a little bit underrepresented in this tournament.
Yes, they are. I mean, we only have 1 Protoss in each group, but this time we have the Boss Toss representing. So I think things are going to change a little bit, and hopefully we can get a Protoss player through. As Group A, we did have 2 Terrans go through, so definitely looking for overall balance, really a Protoss and Zerg to go through here, and that potentially could happen.
It could, certainly. MC has been playing incredibly well lately, without question. Coming fresh off his IEM victory against Puma, who of course went through in Group A, so we could potentially see them clash again.
Yeah, that would be funny, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be. He's been doing really well lately. He had a bit of a slump for a while, and then he came back and just smashed everything, and it was quite the thing to behold. I've got to say, MC certainly one of my favourite Protoss players, so I'm looking forward to seeing him perform in this group, and we might as well just run down the entire group. We're going to talk a little bit about the matchups we're going to be seeing over the next few shows, as well as then briefly talking about what we're going to be seeing in this particular Wednesday show. So Group B is looking something like this. You've got MC, the sole representative of the Protoss race in Group B. You've then got Evil Genius's EG.IdrA. You've got TSL.Symbol. And then Mousesport's Thorzane and the mighty IM MVP.
Well, talking about slumps, as you said before, we do have EG.IdrA again, who just hasn't been performing for a very long time. So he's definitely got to shape up, especially if we do want a Zerg player to advance through. But on the other hand, the other Zerg player we do have here, Symbol, is a very, very talented individual who did qualify. We casted him qualifying into the Iron Squid himself, and he showed some excellent unit control, a lot of heavy aggression. So I'm really interested to see how he's going to be competing in this group. It is a very difficult group, of course, as you mentioned. Thorzane, the Spoon, Terran, of course, and then we have, the GSL champion MVP. It is a very difficult group, and I'm sure a lot of people are very excited to see how this one's going to break down.
Yes, certainly. I'm intrigued to see, and this is going to be one of the first matchups we're going to be seeing today, Symbol versus EG.IdrA in his EVZ, because the way that Symbol got here, he plowed, of course, through a lot of very, very good players indeed, including his teammate, TSL.Pult, but the final was actually a EVZ against Shine. And he showed some amazing, incredible play there against the Team SCV Life player. Once again, another TSL player. The TSL guys really did get in on this Iron Squid with a vengeance, and Symbol was, in fact, the only TSL player to get through.
Yeah, he was, and, not only beating his teammate Pult, who recently won Assembly 2 and has shown that he is one of the best Terran players, but the thing is, in that Zerg vs. Zerg, we actually saw not only his Zerg, Symbol Zerg, that is, shine out, but we saw his patience, because if I remember correctly, he actually started that series 0-2 down, and then I think he came back to win 3-2, so that shows his patience and his ability to work under pressure, which he's definitely going to be needing in Group B.
Well, all of these groups are pretty intense, and this one is certainly no exception, especially bearing in mind that he is going up against EG.IdrA, who is certainly not bad at ZVZ by any stretch, but as you said, has been suffering somewhat in a bit of a slump, really, since he went to Korea. We had that resurgence of EG.IdrA in November, where he basically took 3 events, and he's looking great for EG.IdrA. Then he went to Korea, and suddenly everything started to go horribly wrong. We saw what was going on with show matches. He was losing very badly there, and I don't know, he seems like he's slipped into his old attitude, and he's always said it himself that he is kind of his own worst enemy. His attitude is a problem for him, and he did the best when his manager, Alex Garfield, was really kind of life coaching him, and he got the right attitude in his mind and then suddenly destroyed everybody. But EG.IdRA's showing some unfortunate weaknesses at the moment. He's very vulnerable, of course, to early game attacks, and he's still playing a very rigid, mechanical style that can be easily exploited by anyone that knows what he likes to do.
Absolutely, and I'm sure Symbol in game number 1 here will be wanting to exploit those weaknesses of EG.IdRA, especially because in a group that is so refined with these players, it's very easy to prepare strategies and builds designed to beat individual players, and I'm sure that that's something Symbol would have looked upon more so than EG.IdrA, as EG.IdrA would have played, more mechanical, more generic style of play. So it will be a very interesting Zerg versus Zerg, which will open us up.
That's very, very true. And this also gives us a nice opportunity to introduce the other two members of this group, the two Terran representatives, one foreigner and one Korean, who will also be battling it out later on in the show in the TVT, which I have been looking forward to for a long time. We've already seen a great set of TVTs in Group A, but this TVT might even trump them all. We'll see, because we've got Mouse Sports Thorzane from Sweden and I Am MVP from South Korea. That is going to be one hell of a match.
Absolutely, no doubt about that. Thorzane is so good in TVT. He well, not really that he's shown us, but other players have shown us from Korea. I mean, they actively go ahead and post on Twitter saying, "Hey, Thorzane sent me a replay, and it's an amazing build. He creates builds. He's so well understanding of TVT. He just understands the matchup so well, and these builds that can demolish a player unexpectedly. And I really do believe that Thorzane has a chance against MVP, but at the same time, it is MVP. He is one of the best Terran players, so it's all to play for.
I'd also like to point out that MVP is probably looking for revenge for his team, because at the end of last year, if you recall correctly, in IPL Team Arena Challenge, Thorzane was responsible for an all-kill of, at that point, Quantic Incredible Miracle, the partnership there. And that really will have shaken that team up just a little bit. So I'm sure vengeance is required here for MVP.
I'm sure he'll look for that.
Without question. The problem, I suppose, Thorzane's got is that while he's great at TVT, his recent records against Koreans have not been that great. In fact, his arch nemesis right now is Polt. He has lost 3 consecutive MSI Pro Cups to Polt, 2 of them being 0-3.
Yeah, I mean, the Koreans, man, they keep on getting stronger and stronger, and it's been displayed in every tournament. For example, just in, Group A here, it was 2 Koreans advancing over the 2 foreigners, of course. So, somebody has to step up, and in this group, we do have Thorzane and EG.IdrA representing the non-Koreans. Will they be good enough? Will they play good enough in this group to advance through over the Koreans? That's what we're here to find out.
That we are. Will we see an all-Korean going forward? It is a possibility. We may get 2 from every group going into the round of 8, and they all be Korean. In fact, I'm looking at the composition, and in fact, every group has 3 Koreans and 2 foreigners in it. So the likelihood of an all-Korean round of 8 onwards is actually very high.
Yeah, it's not fair. It's 3v2
in every
group. It's not fair.
Absolutely true. Every group is unfair one way or the other. It's a brutal tournament, but it's got a really great prize. So, needless to say, the best of the best have turned out for this particular event. We've already seen one of the best, one of these big 4 that came in, the special announcement from Iron Squid being, of course, that Boxer, MMA, Nesty, and MVP would be participating. One of those guys is already out. Boxer is done for in Group A with Puma and Marine King Prime advancing. So will we see MVP fail to get through? That's a good question. One of those legends is in every group in this tournament, but they are up against some very stiff competition.
Yeah, it's just going to be so good. I mean, I'm actually just looking over the groups and I'm like, which one is really going to be
which
the
is the group
one?
of death?
Yeah, and it's so difficult to call. This one's actually really difficult. There are some weaknesses in the group, I feel, but overall, this is like the highest skill tournament there is at the moment. No, by no doubt. It's clear to see just by looking at the groups.
I have to wonder if Thorzane will thrive in this environment, because people have said this about Thorzane a lot, and I believe that it is true, that Thorzane really thrives when he has time to prep, and he is able to prepare builds based on specific maps, based on specific opponents, as opposed to in an environment where he's having to play one opponent after another in, say, a live LAN setting where he generally doesn't do as well. I mean, that's relative to how well Thorzane does. He's a great player, incredibly good, easily one of the best foreign Terran, and he just does so much better in this kind of environment. So will that give him the edge he needs to beat MVP, I wonder? I don't know. That is a little bit questionable.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point, actually. I mean, think about, the TSL when he had time to prep for every match. He ended up winning the tournament. He actually did really well in Korea when he went over there. And I would not be surprised if he did pull off results that people were not expecting, especially against MVP here today, and more importantly against MC in the future too.
Yeah, certainly. I'm intrigued to see what's going to be happening. But before we continue, if some of you have joined this tournament late, you might be wondering what's been going on, and we've got a recap right here of Group A. So check out this video, which we like to call Previously on Iron Squid. Alright, ladies and gents, that is what you missed if you didn't watch the last 4 shows. You should regret that, but the VODs are available if you want to watch the full games, and I would certainly recommend it, especially the games from Show 4, which were quite ridiculous. Marine King versus Boxer is a TBT I don't think I'll ever forget, and indeed Puma versus Boxer as well. That was great. So, some good stuff coming up there, but what we're looking at right now is a interesting ZVZ, the first ZVZ that we've had in this tournament thus far. Evil Genius's EG.IdrA, for the longest time known as the Foreigner Hope, the guy that stayed in Code S for a very long time, versus the up-and-comer TSL.Symbol that doesn't really have any big accomplishments to his name as of yet. I mean, he won an ESV TV Korean Weekly. I believe that was late last year. I think it was in December. And then, of course, he won the qualifier for Iron Squid 1. And aside from that, he hasn't accomplished anything.
Yeah, and unfortunately for him, you know, the one shot he had in GSL, which is a funny story, really. He had one shot in GSL, made it through Code B, and his one shot in Code A was actually against Genius, you know, the later, the future Code S champion. So, you know, all that hard work to actually get into the GSL and then get slapped back out of the entire league straight away, it's a little bit unfortunate. And as we both know, you know, he's shown excellence. You know, the qualifier was a really beautiful play, an amazing talent to watch, and I do feel that he will get there. He used to be a Brood War player. He used to be a B-teamer for the old team Hwasong Oz, so I have no doubt that during this year, and maybe even in this tournament, we could actually see a breakout performance.
We could, and I hope that we do, because what we saw from him in the qualifier was very exciting and dynamic play. It was patient, but it was also, it had a lot of flair to it. Burrowed Banelings in particular are a specialty of Symbol. Now, as to how relevant that will be in a ZVZ, which more often than not is resolved in the first 10 minutes of play, well, that is a different question entirely, and it may simply come down to simple micro, or indeed potentially build order losses one way or the other. So I'm intrigued. I like ZVZ. ZVZ is becoming a very dynamic mirror, so I'm looking forward to seeing what we have here.
Yeah, I think we're going to be seeing a very high-paced game for sure. EG.IdrA, you know, he's very calculated. He's actually pretty good in this matchup, to be fair. He's shown good games against Nesty here as well most recently, but I feel that if IdrA wants to do well in this tournament, he actually has to win this series, no doubt about that. I mean, he's going up against Thorzane, MVP, and MC after this. Those 3 games alone, especially including his arch nemesis, they're going to be very, very difficult. And this is almost a must-win for IdrA if he wants to go through. We saw what happened to Todd in Group A, losing the first game, losing the second game, and then it just snowballs out of control. So for IdrA, for EG fans, this is a must-win.
It is, and ZVZ is perhaps the place where you can pull off that really solid win. Maybe even, say, 2-0, which, if it comes down to map score, could end up being fairly important for you. And that must be done before he goes on to face some very scary people in the rest of this group. It's weird to consider IdrA as an underdog, but with the caliber of the group that he's in, I think that we can safely say that he's in that position right now.
That's, yeah, actually, I mean, you just putting it there, and I'm like, wow, you know, did he say that?
Really?
I'm like,
yeah.
God, really? Is that where EG.IdrA's gone down to now? As you said earlier, he was the foreigner hope. You know, he was the player that everybody looked towards to carry the flame, but, you know, that's not the case right now. And in Group B, he's probably, in terms of predictions, almost at the bottom, if not at the bottom, very close between Symbol and IdrA. So he has a lot to show, and he has a lot to actually say to everybody, hey guys, you know, I am still there, I am still one of the best, and you know, what better place to show.
Yeah, I want to see what this time in the Slayer's house has actually given him, honestly. We've seen a few show matches here and there from him, we've seen some results in tournaments. He didn't do all that well in MLG, to say the least, but I just want to see the old IdrA, and by the old IdrA, I'm talking about the one that we saw really in the early stages of StarCraft 2, or indeed in November, when he did go beast mode and he went on a fantastic roll. Will we see that from him, or is he going to fall to Symbol? I guess we're about to find out, folks, because we're going into Game 1 right here of Symbol versus IdrA. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first game of this best-of-3 series between evil geniuses IdrA. He is in the green trunks and he is playing Zerg to the southwest of this particular map, which is, of course, the Daybreak. Versus his opponent, it is TSL.Symbol. He is in the blue trunks, playing Zerg to the northeast.
And if IdrA's going to win this series and really, you know, get that kickstart within Group B, then he has to pull off the win on this map. And I think this map's going to be best suited towards his style. Daybreak naturally being a more defensive map due to the longer distances between bases. And aggression can always be hidden behind bases and behind the creep line, which is the most important thing, as obviously if overlords go in, the queens kill them. But until that point, if anything does come, because of the distances between bases, IdrA will have more than enough time to actually adapt to the scenario. So I feel this is going to be quite a good map for him.
Yeah, I certainly think so. The extractor trait coming out here from Symbol. What is it about Korean Zergs? They always go for this, and if I recall correctly, the 9 Overlord has been proven to be ever so slightly more efficient.
Yeah, like 5 minerals or something, and most people don't even look into that, and they're like, well, whatever, you know, 5 minerals, and that's why we still see people do it. They don't do it. Yeah.
Personal preference, really. I think it's more of a comfort thing than anything else, as far as I can see. Overlords now moving across the map and forming a very neat line, as they tend to on both this map and in this particular matchup. And as you've mentioned, the idea being that if you get those Overlords in position, you've got a lot of warning as to what's coming at you. And both of these guys also going to go for hatch first.
Yeah, they do. And with the Overlords is that as long as one's outside of the destructible debris on either bases, and then you have one south in case they run around the long way, you're absolutely fine. You'll have so much time to prepare. But we do start to see a bit of deviation coming out here as we see IdrA deciding to go for the extractor rather than the spawning pool first. He grabs a cannon of both at the same time, but he's showing us that he wants to get speed. He wants to be the one with map control, the one to be scouting, because as we said, it's very difficult to scout past the creep line with Overlords, but if you have Zergling speed and Zerglings, then you do have that option.
Yes, you do. You also have the option to actually turn on the heat if need be, if you see an opportunity for that. Admittedly, the problem being that your opponent can react quite rapidly to that kind of aggression, and maybe you overextend yourself and you end up being in a nasty economic position. This is a knife-edge matchup, as many mirrors tend to be, and some might even argue this is even more knife-edge than PvP. One big mistake, especially in early Baneling wars, can cost you the game.
Yeah, they absolutely can, and both players have to be so careful about that. We do see both of them now scouting each other's hat trims, like, alright, cool, if you'll play macro first, that's cool, I have also. So both of these guys probably drone. We actually see a deviation here from EG.IdrA, who is only getting 2 Zerglings. He's like, why do I need 4? You've gone hatchery, you're not going aggression. So that's actually pretty good for EG.IdrA, who takes a little bit of a lead in this game early, because he's getting the speed first, and then he's also only built those 2 initial links, but does decide to build 2 more after getting a couple of drones, but just has a little bit of a better income because of that.
Yeah, and the problem being, I suppose, if you get Ling speed, but you only have 2 Lings, there's not a huge amount you can do about it. You can scout, of course. You don't really gain a lot of map control because you can't take a straight-up fight one way or the other, but adding a couple or more on there makes sense. And someone made an analogy and a comparison a while ago that ZVZ like this is very much like playing a game of chicken. Like, you see what your opponent's doing, and you do it a bit later, and you goad your opponent into going just a little bit more extreme, and it's a match of, at least in the first few minutes, very minor deviations and changes.
And very, very interesting here. EG.IdRA's still in gas, and he's got the Baneling Nest coming down as well, so he could show us some aggression here. And he does get a full scout of his opponent with those 2 initial Zerglings. Sees the double spine crawler coming down. Sees that his opponent is only mining minerals, not gas. And EG.IdRA now has a couple of options. He can go ahead and be aggressive with this and try to bust through with Ling or Banelings, or the best option, to be honest, is sit with a Baneling Nest. That doesn't matter. Take a 3rd base, because what really is your opponent going to be doing to your 3rd base, especially when he has 3 spine crawlers down?
Yeah, he's not going to have the numbers, and even if he just goes in with Lings, then you have defensive Banelings available to deal with that. Symbol's now going to throw down 3 Extractors on top of that immediately. Attempted run-by is, of course, thwarted by this double Queen block here. Symbol currently actually sitting on 4 Queens, which is a fairly large number, I feel, for this stage of this matchup.
Yeah, I mean, he's got 2 to block the ramp, and then 2, of course, to the lava injects, and it is a big, big investment. He will have decent creep spread going into the mid-stage of this game, but to be honest, it hasn't really helped his economy that much. Aside from his gases, obviously earlier than EG.IdRA's, but the drone count's relatively close, and EG.IdRA's pulling ahead in long term because of this 3rd base. He does have access to a 5th and 6th gas as well. So overall, I do prefer EG.IdRA's build going into the stages, but of course, because of the early gas, Symbol does have a tech advantage as he's teching faster.
Yes, that is true. The lair is on the way for Symbol here. We've got a macro hatch coming out of Symbol as opposed to a 3rd base. 3rd base is entirely scouted. Symbol knows that it's there, but he can't really do anything to it just yet. Roach Warren coming out from EG.IdrA here as well. A curious choice. Still hasn't gone to lair yet, and is only just now taking the 3rd gas here.
Yeah, EG.IdRA's going to be playing a very ground army, so he won't really be looking to tech up to Spire or Infestors very early. So he'll be playing Roach and then into Infestors later on, definitely, because if he does try to tech up here, the tech's going to be out faster from Symbol, so EG.IdRA doesn't want to fight with fire. He'd rather use something else, of course. And without the 3rd base here from Symbol only has one option, which is to tech, and he's gone for a double Evolution Chamber build. Oh no, is it just one? Sorry. No, it is double. Okay, so he's gone double Evolution Chamber, and then he's going for a Roach Horn, and then probably Roach Speed of his own. But he's going to be hitting a very beautiful timing here, where 1-1, of course, overtakes EG.IdRA's pure 1-0.
There's also one thing I want to point out, that Symbol's Overlord spread compared to EG.IdrA's is far superior. He basically has all avenues covered. He's got amazing vision across the map, whereas while EG.IdrA had that map control for a while and kind of still does, he still can't cover all angles. It does concern me just a little bit there. Whatever the case, Symbol's now starting to pump out some Roaches of his own, going for Burrow and, of course, the speed upgrade, and we've got Roaches coming for EG.IdrA as well, but since his lair is very late, we don't have those crucial upgrades coming in.
Yeah, EG.IdrA, the reason why he doesn't have any map control is he's very scared about the Spire. So if he has overlords everywhere like Symbol does, then he's going to lose them all. But EG.IdrA should be fine, even though he doesn't have the tech, which we do see from Symbol in terms of double upgrades and Roach Speed. Roach Speed doesn't matter. As long as EG.IdrA doesn't move off his own creep, he actually needs to connect his natural to the 3rd. And Roaches are fine on creep, and he'll have a significant amount of numbers. Actually, EG.IdRA's, 70 drones almost, compared to just 54. And the income rate is heavily flavored towards flavored. Oh my god! Okay,
delicious
favored
income
towards EG.IdrA, and yeah, he's actually really fine here.
Yes, he is, and a small force Symbol now moving out. Did it get seen? Well, actually, EG.IdRA's got an Overseer, so that's certainly not a problem there. A second Overseer, in fact, so he's really going for it in terms of the scouting and the detection. Lots of roaches moving in. Symbol can't really do anything to that third whatsoever. And Symbol is actually the one now going for Infestors. We've got +2 coming out for EG.IdrA pretty much immediately after Lair. More roaches being added on. And his opponent going for Pathogen Glands. And EG.IdrA now just looking to push out a bit.
Yeah, I mean, it just has to be very careful. Even though his roach speed is near completion, like he's walking into an opponent that's been more on the defensive side here. So I hope for EG.IdRA's sake that he's just poking out, not to really do damage, but to fall back upon, putting indirect pressure on. Because he doesn't. I really don't think he should be taking a fight. He has, of course, Symbol has 2-2 upgrades. Infestors are almost on the way out too. So we'll see what EG.IdRA's doing.
Yeah, I'm not entirely convinced that he can do much, honestly. It's 1-1 here for Symbol. The +2 is on its way for EG.IdrA, but it's nowhere near completion at this stage. No attempted aggression coming from Symbol at the moment up to the top, who seems content just to sit on these two bases. The drone count is now an awful lot closer. We've got EG.IdrA adding on yet more drones, in fact. He's going to have a very high drone count very shortly, and looking just to get his Pathogen Glands and his Infestors out as well. But once again, that tech is a little bit slow here from EG.IdrA.
And we do have Symbol pushing out, and because of the slow tech from EG.IdrA, he has to be careful, and I'm really scared of him being in the center of the map here. Infestors will be on the way very shortly here. The biggest window ever for Symbol is when 2-2 finishes, but he's actually moving down here. Does have an upgrade lead over EG.IdrA, but definitely not a #1 yet.
Yep, and here we go. Roach on roach action in the center of the map. Finally, some damage being done. Now, I would say that EG.IdrA, of course, has the numbers advantage, and that +1 armor isn't really going to make that much of a difference, as we can see. The numbers are really all that matter here, and forward EG.IdrA goes, pushing Symbol all the way back. Good damage done there by EG.IdrA, and a significant roach lead of 35-20.
Yeah, EG.IdrA just wants to back off now and wait for his Infestors. 4 are about to pop out with +2 as well and borrow. Yeah, that's going to be really nice for EG.IdrA. If he goes now, it's of course a waste of money. But on the other hand, Symbol's 2-2 is getting close, man. And when that finishes, he will have a significant lead over his opponent, because it'll be 2-0 versus 2-2. And that's when a big difference will come into play. But EG.IdrA smartly now going for this 4th base, but likewise we see Symbol doing exactly the same.
Yep, they're just going to trade their 4ths here, and both of these guys are pretty much maxed out on roaches and a couple of Infestors. EG.IdRA's got 53 roaches, a fairly absurd number there. Burrow is available for Symbol. It doesn't have tunneling claws, and we also see Burrow available for EG.IdrA as well. But it's the Burrow that matters, really, as opposed to the actual tunneling claws upgrade. Both of these guys just posturing at the moment, trying to get position. That +2 is about to kick in for Symbol, and that may trigger him to go, as you pointed out. He is maxed out, so there's no point in him sitting any further than that. Once that 2-2 goes, I can just see it coming. Symbol's just going to crash down on EG.IdrA.
Yeah, and in these Roach Wars, it's all about position too. If anybody walks into the opponent, they're going to be more clumped up. Therefore, Infestors and Fungarov will do a lot of damage. And I really do like the use of Changelings all the time here by Symbol. Haven't seen it at all from EG.IdrA. But Symbol always getting in there, just checking the upgrades, checking the army composition. 2-2 is finished now for Symbol. He has an opportunity to go in. Whether he'll take it or not, we'll see. But, you know, if he does walk down these narrow point ways, the ramps, even through the middle, the Fungarov could play a deciding factor in the game. We do see EG.IdrA, though, at a hive, and with a Spire coming down, but it's a little bit off for a greater Spire timing. So it's maybe just to continue with upgrades.
Yes, could very well be. The hive is going to be done slightly before Symbols as well, but Symbols kind of, I don't know, maybe he waits for he could wait for Tunneling Claws here, or he could just be playing defensively and saying to EG.IdrA, well, come and get me, because he knows he's got an upgrade advantage. He's fully scouted his opponent's force. He knows what he's up against here. We've got a Hydra Den coming down here for EG.IdrA as well, so looking to mix that force up a little bit, as well as +3 missile attack coming in. But I have to wonder who's going to end up getting the upper hand here. There's a lot of spines coming down for Symbol, so he's certainly not messing around there. But he's got Tunneling Claws, and that seems to have triggered him to go. Or maybe not. Oh, he's going to go to intercept, actually. There's a very small Roach force moving in here that is going to take quite significant damage. A Roach run-by coming here, right into the main. He's going to gain some nice information. The question is, will he do any damage? And to be honest, he's doing this for one reason. He wants to clean out his Roach count just a little bit so that he can actually get some Hydralisks in there.
Yeah, he does. Hydras are going to prove really nice there. There was 4 Infestors running towards IdrA's third, but it was picked up and killed immediately. 4 that were borrowed. So unfortunately for Symbol, he does take a bit of damage there. But as you said, very smartly, that he's just clearing out roaches. He's gone Hydra Tech. The Spire is only for defensive purposes in case Broodlords come out, that he can easily make Corruptors. And IdrA now with double Evolution Chambers starting to crawl back in terms of the upgrade war, but it's still 2-2 with 3-3 being made once again here. So there is still an advantage for Symbol. When he does decide to take that, we'll have to find out.
Oh yes, and the composition looking really nice for IdrA here. I do like the addition of Hydralisk. So does Symbol apparently, because he's doing exactly the same thing. Ventral Sax is coming in for Symbol right here though, so there are opportunities to start doing economic damage and not to just fight in a straight up... I suppose it's just a brute force war between these two ground armies here. There's not going to be an awful lot of finesse involved in it. Tunneling Claws is available for Symbol. Do you think this is really going to affect the fight all that much?
Tunneling Claws? Not so much really, because they're just going to borrow anyway, and Tunneling Claws of course increases the regen, but I don't think it will, because the brute force of the army, it's not going to make that much difference, because when they do borrow, they're going to be underground, not doing any damage. So I feel that if he hits his upgrades well, then I think he can win. But will IdrA decide to hit before, though? The problem is, though, you have to find an opening. You know, if you don't find an opening, then you can never fight clumped up versus spread out. If there is an opening available, then someone will jump for it. And we actually see Symbol sending roaches to the top left here, trying to obviously go for this 4th base, but there's just no holes. You know, IdrA's already there.
This is to draw him out of position because there's a Nidus Worm somewhere. I have no idea
inside
where
the
at this
main
stage.
of
Oh, it's
IdrA.
at the back of the main right here for Symbol. And that is devastating potentially. Roaches are just going to now stream into IdrA's base. Nothing was done about that Nidus Worm, and the army is completely out of position. And that was a nice trick there by Symbol. He drew IdrA's army out of position. He's now going to be able to crush the 4th here as well, potentially, and is now overrunning. The Hive's about to go down as well, and IdrA in so much trouble.
Oh, wow, you know, he's losing stuff at the 4th base, too, and loses Infestors needlessly. Hydras versus Roaches. IdrA getting torn apart here. And remember, Symbol's army is expendable, man. He has so much money.
Yeah, he could just replace this, no problem at all. He's got the bases, he's got the lava for it, and there's the GG. Wow, as Symbol lays down a carpet of infested Terran eggs on the 4th. Whoa, okay, well that was 18 minutes of posturing, followed by 2 minutes of annihilation there by Symbol. A nice little move. I saw the Ventral Sax and I'm thinking, right, what he's looking to do here is IdrA's just going to play very passive, as you can see, and he played passive for such a long time. He had 200 for about 5 minutes, throws away a few roaches to mess around with his force composition a little bit, but he had 4k in the bank by the end of that, and he was also building 26 roaches and 3 corruptors plus upgrades, so he had the money, I feel, to start throwing his army away more. You know what the really silly thing is as well? Look at the supply count difference between these two right now. Yeah. At the end of this game, bear in mind, IdrA GG'd 186 supply to 107. And I know that, of course, Symbol could have very easily replenished, but then again, so could IdrA. So the assassination of that hive was apparently enough to trigger him to say, I can't do anything. That's it. I'm done.
I was just looking at the minimap. He will clean up inside his main base. That's for sure. He will recover his main base. He did lose the hive. At the top left on that 4th base, there's only 2 roaches there, when there's more than enough for IdrA to go in. But I think what's really annoyed IdrA in this to push him out of the game was, I think, the infested Terrans that were going to pick off that base, no doubt. Yeah. And they were picking off the single Broodlord he has also. Mm-hmm. And then he also knows that Symbol has the same amount of money and has taken no damage whatsoever. But that was, like you said, 2 boxers staring at each other, and then one guy punches him in the face, and that's it. It's a weird way. It's a weird game.
I mean, it wasn't even a knockout punch either. The guy gets punched in the face once and just like throws in the towel and says, well, that's it. I could definitely understand what IdrA's logic is, though. You've just explained it perfectly. He knew that his opponent hadn't taken any damage and also had more money. I don't know if he really knew how large his army was in comparison. We can look at army supply. It's 138 to 52. There were 26 more roaches coming in. A counter-attack could have done significant damage before new units could have come out for Symbol, I feel. There were spine crawlers on the front base here, but this base at the bottom, not so well defended. 4 spines, easily smashed through that with +3, which I believe he had by that stage. Yeah, I'm fairly sure he did. And he was about to get +2 as well, so I don't know. You can always overanalyze an IdrA game when this kind of thing happens, but at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is that Symbol wins that game and takes one up in this best of 3 series. And we'll see if IdrA can pull it back or whether he will lose 2-0 against Symbol in, quite frankly, a crucial must-win game because the rest of this group is not looking any prettier, I've got to say. So we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, Game 2 of IdrA versus Symbol.